I had a dream where I was the female lead in a Mary Sue text.it. Was a cheesy story. After the male lead and the average-born white moonlight female match are torn apart by their parents, the male lead finds someone who looks a lot like the white moonlight to be with. He torments the female lead, thinking she has a face she doesn't deserve, while at the same time he mouths off and does this and that with her. In the end, he is finally impressed by the simple and kind-hearted heroine and turns a blind eye to the returning white moonlight. I am that white moonlight. 3 hours ago, I just got off the plane, non-stop taxi to Shenye's villa to find him. I knocked on the door and came in. Saw a look of surprise, avoiding the line of sight of my friend, and saw the face of guilt Shenyan, but also saw that with me look very similar, a face of unbelief, heartbroken her. At that moment, I felt that something inside me was collapsing. I spoke, "Ah Yan, introduce yourself." Hearing me call out, "Ah, Yan," the sadness on that girl's face increased by 1 point, and I caught the intolerance on Shenya's face. In fact, I wasn't trying to declare my sovereignty or anything, it was purely just that since we met, that's how I've been calling him. Naturally. Let me still have a trace of luck is that Shenya lied to me, this is the company's new signing He Jiao, today is her birthday. He explained, He Jiao has no relatives, I just feel sorry for her, so I called everyone over to get together. He also introduced me to He Jiao. He Jiao, this is Su Nianqing, he said. I looked at He Jiao, who was a bit shaky, with an arrogant expression. Oh, happy birthday. I looked at Shen Yan again, in that case, I'll leave first. Shen Yan only froze for a split second, and busily said, I'll see you off. Before I could say no need, He Jiao carefully and urgently pulled Shen Ye's sleeve. Mr. Shen, today is my birthday, I promised to accompany me for a day. I didn't say anything, and I looked at Shen Yan with a good look, my feet stopped there, waiting to see what Shen Yan said. Shen Yan hesitated for a split second and gently but also firmly pushed He Jiao's hand away. Stop it. Shen Yan took the suitcase in my hand and opened the passenger door for me in the crowd's complicated eyes. I heard an extremely whispered sentence. A double is just a double in the end. Shen Yan fastened his seatbelt. I spoke, drop me off at the bottom of the hill, I'll take a cab myself. I felt a hint of discomfort from Shen Yan. Let me take you home, it's not safe for a girl to take a taxi. I thought to myself, I've been abroad for 8 years as a girl and I haven't seen where it's not safe. I made up a name, the name of the hotel I stayed at the night before I was kicked out of the country 8 years ago. He didn't know where it was and checked the navigation. On the way, he asked me, how have you been all these years? I pretended to be looking out the window, just not wanting to look at him, not bad. Your mom did call in money every year to fund my studies at Harvard. You're good, do you want to work for my company? I laughed coldly in my heart and shook my head no, I've already found a job. He stopped talking. He sent me to the hotel, I guess Mr. Shen has never stayed in a hotel with such a small door, if not for my reminder, he would have driven through the big G. He found a place to park and looked very surprised. He found a place to park and looked at me with a complicated expression. You. I interrupted him, taking the suitcase he was holding. See you later. I walked into the hotel, but turned around. The moment I entered and saw Shen Yan answering the phone. I don't know what was said on the phone, he looked embarrassed and spoiled, took the phone and got into the car and drove away. The lobby lady asked me, Miss, do you want a room? I looked back and shook my head. The previous Shen Yan would have waited for me to go in before leaving, no matter how important it was. 3. When I was in college, Shen Yan and I were a model couple. I was working in the school cafeteria at that time, and Shen Yan got food from my window every day, and even insisted on attending my major class. He was aggressive, but his routine seemed a bit clumsy, and he was sincere. Even the teacher and counselor knew about him. During a physical education class, we were testing 1,200 meters. The boy playing football in the playground didn't control the strength, and the ball went straight to me. I didn't stop my feet, got scared, and fell to the ground hard. At the moment when my body fell, my brain didn't react. I didn't even have time to protect my face, and I fell to the ground. At first, I was a little confused. The physical education teacher asked me if I could move, and I could still stagger and turn over. Then a tall figure pushed away the onlookers and stood in front of me with a firm goal. With the light behind him, blocking the dazzling sun, he bent down and picked me up with a small exclamation. I struggled slightly, but was frightened by his cold eyes. Funny. He was always as obedient as a grandson in front of me. When I told him to go east, he would go east even if there was no way to climb over the wall. That was the first time he glared at me. It was the first time I saw him angry, so I stopped moving and let him carry me to the infirmary. He put me on the chair in the infirmary, squatted in front of me, and frowned at the wound on my knee that was bleeding slightly. It was not very serious, and it was not a big deal in my eyes, but he said nothing. It was like a big deal. This man had a fierce face, but his movements were extremely cautious and gentle, for fear of hurting me. Shen Yan. I called him. HMPH. He paused with the cotton swab in his hand, and breathed out of his nose, as a response to me. I found it funny. Do you like Me. He lost his toughness and buried his head deeper. I could only see his red ears. I waited for a long time before I heard him reply softly. Yes. Then he looked up at my eyes as if he had made up his mind. Yes, I like you, only you. I got the answer and said to him, be my boyfriend. 4. I like Shen Yan. He is very good. Really very good. This is my first time to fall in love, and my reaction is always a little slow. I don't know how other people fall in love. He will be angry that I don't rely on him for anything, but at the same time he feels sorry for my precociousness and understanding. He will help me save a seat in the library and help me deliver food. His love is gentle and meticulous, sometimes a little childish and immature. Because I am busy with part-time work, we rarely have the opportunity to go out together. On Halloween, I agreed to date him. He looked up the strategy and prepared for the date for a long time, writing it carefully in the notebook. When I found out, he scratched his head shyly. You're so stupid, aren't you? I don't know. You can recite it with your eyes closed, but you can't help it. You're afraid that I'll forget. His cautiousness made me feel even more guilty. Such a common thing between lovers is so important to him. I know Shen Yan is a child who was spoiled by his family. He is simple and passionate. Such a good person actually likes me. Our first kiss was on this day. Shen Yan looks fearless, but he is actually quite brave. I felt his excitement when watching the movie. I looked at him several times, and he blushed for no reason and turned his head away from me. I guessed something, but I teased him deliberately. He was still chatting about something until he sent me downstairs to the dormitory. He told me about a roommate falling off the bed 3 times, and I thought it was the first time I heard it. Then I'll go up. I wanted to force him. Shen Yan looked at me, stunned, and nodded. Be careful on the road. Okay, I'll call you when we get there. I nodded. My steps were much slower than usual, and I turned back once when I reached the stairs. He was standing there looking at me. I was so angry that I thought this guy was so stupid that he was hopeless. 5. We played until late, and I took a shower in the dormitory and just lay on the bed when he called. I answered. Are you asleep? I replied, just finished showering. I heard him sniffing softly. Go to bed early. I frowned, thinking of something, leaning over the bed and lifting a corner of the curtain. Then I couldn't help it and ran downstairs. I felt angry in my heart, but I said, soak your feet before going to bed tonight. I stepped out of the dormitory building. The boy was tall, wearing a black down jacket and a white knitted hat, standing under the street light. The yellow light shone on him. He was holding the phone, his eyes slightly lowered, and he was incredibly gentle. He looked up inadvertently, saw me, and was stunned for a moment. I was so angry that I hung up the phone. He looked at me and giggled. The boy's nose was red from the cold, and his eyes looked at me brightly. Every time he saw me angry, he laughed like this. Stupid, stupid, and dumb. Is it sick to stand under the building in the winter? I walked towards him, he thought I was angry, and he was a little shy of being caught, hugged me and coaxed. I left because I wanted to hear your voice. I didn't say anything, suddenly tiptoed and kissed him. Neither of us closed our eyes. Seeing each other's love clearly, my heartbeat accelerated. 6. Iron. I called him. He said, ah. Good night. Shen Yan hadn't come back to his senses yet. Good night. Good night. 7. In my second year abroad, I wrote a book about the story of Shen Yan and me. This time I came back for work and for this book. Shen Yan opened an entertainment company, bought my film and television copyright, and asked me to be the screenwriter. Although I knew that this might not be Shen Yan's instruction, and he might not know about it, I still sold the copyright to him without hesitation. It was so straightforward that the other party was a little unbelievable. I didn't expect that I would meet the heroine as soon as I returned to China. Was he Jiao? She probably didn't expect that the screenwriter would be me. Miss Su. Miss Su, I looked at her, unable to tell what I felt, and nodded slightly to her. Her face looked a little ugly, and she was absent-minded when reading. Later, I had dinner with the director and producer, and the producer mentioned to me in a subtle way, Mr. Shen has something special about Miss He. He reminded me to be careful not to make He Jiao unhappy. I nodded, raised my glass to toast him, and swallowed the bitterness in my heart. I knew he meant well, reminding a new screenwriter who had just returned to China. 8. After returning to China for a month, I had not contacted Shen Yan except for the night I just came back. He came to visit the studio as an investor that day. I saw his profile through the crowd. He was very tall, wearing a black coat, with a meticulous suit underneath, which was very eye-catching. I saw his exquisite and handsome profile and his pursed lips. The director said, Xiao He has another scene, which will end soon. Mr. Shen will wait a moment. Everyone assumed that Shen Yan was looking for He Jiao. I unconsciously clenched my fists and heard Shen Yan's cold and unquestionable voice, I'll go and see. This scene is the heroine sitting alone on the rooftop of the school after breaking up with the hero. It is to shoot the atmosphere of youth and melancholy and express the beauty of the heroine. There is nothing special about it. Shen Yan stood with the director, looking at the pitiful and fragile He Jiao in a white dress in the camera. The wind blew her hair, revealing her empty and helpless eyes stained with tears. I caught a trace of heartache in Shen Ye's calm and traceless eyes. My heart was broken. I turned my eyes away and didn't want to look again. The accident happened at this time. He Jiao stood up and suddenly slipped and almost fell from the side of the high building. I looked back with a scream and saw the black figure rushing out at a speed that ordinary people could not imagine and pulled the girl into his arms. There was a chaos, and the two were helped up by someone, and Shen Yan also hugged He Jiao tightly in his arms. The serious heartache in Shen Ye's eyes reminded me of the year in the infirmary, when he squatted on the ground, holding a cotton swab and carefully looking at me. It's just that the boy has grown into a man, and the person he feels sorry for has changed to someone else. Shen Yan and I looked at each other, and he finally noticed me. Seeing my red eyes, he looked guilty and evasive. He Jiao was pushed away by him. I saw his mouth shape. Nian Nian. He Jiao looked at Shen Yan in disbelief. Mr. Shen. Shen Yan didn't look at her and walked towards me. I guess he wanted to explain, but he didn't open his mouth. The people around us looked at us with complicated eyes. Especially He Jiao and I looked very similar. But He Jiao was delicate, and I thought she was cold and heartless. He Jiao was more likable than me. Since that day, the crew members guessed that the original novel had a prototype. The unrecognized heroine was me. The affectionate and gentle hero was Shen Yan. But Shen Yan already had someone else in his heart. The producer avoided me, and I was sent away by the director when I occasionally went to discuss roles with He Jiao. On the surface, He Jiao was said to be stupid, but in fact, he was afraid that I would take advantage of my position to seek revenge. Even the male actors in the crew came over and warned me fiercely. No matter who you are, who you write about, don't try to bully He Jiao, or I will kill you. The producer also told me that He Jiao was a hardworking, kind and motivated actress. But I couldn't see that He Jiao was having trouble getting into the role every day, delaying the progress of the entire crew, but everyone was willing to tolerate her and protect her. Except me. I was the vicious ex. Just like in the dream, no matter what I thought, they bit me to death that I was a villain. 10 at noon, I was having lunch with the director, and the crew had the same lunch box. The popular actor, who played the male lead, the actor who warned me that day, suddenly rushed in and spilled the food on me. My beige knitted long skirt was instantly covered with stains. It happened so suddenly that no one reacted. A girl who was doing makeup on the crew handed me a piece of paper and asked me to wipe it. I thanked her and took it. You bitch, you asked Mr. Shen to change the female lead. You are so vicious. I was stunned and didn't hear what he said later. Change actors? Halfway through the filming, suddenly change. Shen Yan changed. Why? No one told me. I looked up, and the girl who just handed me the paper had already stood far away. I held the paper in my hand. After a while, my fingers loosened, and the snow-white and clean paper fell to the ground, stained with scattered food. Dirty. I faced the vicious words of the popular traffic star, picked up the lunchbox beside me, and poured the whole lunchbox on his precious head, which was said to cost tens of thousands of dollars. 11. I received a call from Shen Ye in the evening. I'm sorry, He Jiao said she doesn't want to shoot anymore. I lay on the sofa and forgave him very tolerantly. Shen Yan, your male lead told me that he is the one who is vicious and I asked you to change. The other end of the phone was stagnant. Nian Nian, I didn't know it would be like this, but He Jiao made a fuss. I interrupted him, Mr. Shen, this is your company's project. Who you want to play has nothing to do with me, but please keep your mouth shut, otherwise I will let my lawyer contact you. After that, I hung up the phone and threw myself next to the toilet and vomited until tears came out. Disgusting. So disgusting. 1-2 the next day, I returned to the crew. The brainless popular traffic star was probably warned. He was obviously upset with me, but he stood in front of me with a stiff face to apologize. Can you be an actor with your level? I raised my eyebrows. He was stunned and was about to get angry. He Jiao's delicate voice came. Don't blame him, screenwriter Su. It's my fault. I looked over. He Jiao frowned slightly, looked at the male actor, and asked him to leave first. She wanted to talk to me alone. The popular traffic star glanced at me, her eyes full of vigilance. Call me if something happens. I'll be outside. He Jiao smiled at him. It's okay. Screenwriter Su is not that kind of person. The popular traffic star looked back every few steps. After the people left completely, I looked at He Jiao, wondering what she would say. The white tight sweater outlined her beautiful figure. She looked at me with some embarrassment. Just say what you want to say. He Jiao said, I'm sorry, screenwriter Su, I like Mr. Shen, and I used to like this novel, but as soon as I think about your past with Mr. Shen, I can't act anymore, sorry. I looked at her. She looked apologetic without pretending. The atmosphere was so tense, if I didn't do something, I would be too sorry for those people who were on guard against me. I held the glass and looked at He Jiao, who was surprised. With a click, the glass broke on the ground. The door was pushed open, and Shen Yan came in nervously, and his panic made me laugh. Thank you, Shen Yan, I don't love you anymore. If I could still be stubborn before, unwilling to admit that I was just the white moonlight female supporting role in the dream to make the male and female protagonists closer, unwilling to admit that the 8 years I persisted in were just an insignificant stroke in the book. Then, I'm giving up now. Shen Yan's suspicion was like a loud slap in my face. Hot. 1-3 The popular traffic followed closely behind, and the entire crew gathered outside. They looked like they were afraid that something would happen to He Jiao. But if nothing happened here, how disappointed they would be. I looked at their stunned faces. From the moment they stood outside, they never trusted me. From the beginning, they were wary of me getting close to He Jiao because they were sure that I would embarrass He Jiao. But discussing the role with the heroine is my job, and empathizing with the role is her profession and obligation. Shen Yan looked at the room full of people and blushed a little. I looked at them. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I would have thought that I was jealous and deliberately made things difficult for He Jiao. 8 years can really change a lot. Even if I still have hope, I have to admit it. Shen Yan, who once told me that he only liked me, has changed his mind. The one who needs to leave here is not the angry heroine, but me, who is addicted to the past. The place I tried my best to return to, no longer has a place for me. Why should I humiliate myself, and why should I insist on it alone? The embarrassment of the ex. The embarrassment of the past. Shen Yan, if one day I become a dispensable existence in your heart, then you are an unnecessary existence in my heart. My fingertips trembled a little, I trembled unexpectedly. The knife that Shen Yao hung on my heart was pushed into my chest by my own hands, and the bloody misery made me face the reality. Shen Yan, you don't deserve to shoot my novel. I am not the ex who sets off your love. 14 I left the crew, blocked everyone, and refused all external calls. They can't find me. 8 years ago, even if Shen Yang cried and begged, he could only watch his mother separate us, and he didn't even have the chance to see me off at the airport. I stayed alone in that hotel for one night, boarded a plane to the other side of the earth, and was forced to cut off contact with everyone. Alone, in a foreign country. 8 years later, I am Sun Yanxing, a new star in the financial circle whose whereabouts cannot be freely decided by Shen Yan and the Shen family. I am still me, but not me anymore. 1-5 Ji Xiangchen threw the folder on my desk with sleepy eyes. Finished? My typing hand paused almost imperceptibly. No more. Ji Xiangchen didn't say anything, and I heard him fiddling with the coffee machine. I thought the evil capitalist had finally become a human being, but I didn't expect that I had overestimated him. Ji Xiangchen used my cup to make himself a cup of coffee. I stared at him. The man stood in the backlight, took off his coat, and wore a white shirt on top, and the hem wrapped around his thin waist and tucked into black suit pants. My sight stopped. There, Ji Xiangchen suddenly looked back at me, raised his eyebrows. Want to drink? He raised the coffee cup in his hand. I shook my head and looked away. Ji Xiangchen didn't say anything. I heard him fiddling with the coffee machine again, and a cup of steaming coffee was placed in front of me by a beautiful hand. You deserve better, Ji Xiangchen said. I pondered. Within 3 seconds, the ruthless bourgeois boss began to exploit me, a poor working people. The plan is a little bit bad, redo it. 16 I have known Ji Xiangchen for almost 7 years. I now go out in famous brands and have a lot of savings. In this building, I am envied by many people and their goal. But how embarrassed I was 7 years ago. Although only a few people have seen it, it is indeed the most unbearable past for me. Ji Xiangchen is the unfortunate witness. He is my respected predecessor. The first securities I sold were bought by him. At that time, the few dollars that Ji Xiangchen showed through his fingers were enough to pay for my living expenses for a month. When I almost wanted to give up, he asked me, "We are short of a handyman in the finance department, are you coming?" Later, I found out. In the United States, many people in Ji Xiangchen's company were picked up by him in this way of picking up rags. I am one of them. It's great that I, a rag, can be put into the capitalist's trash can. The little assistant smiled. When he heard it, Sister Su has President Ji to escort her. Even in a foreign country, she is definitely a person who can call the wind and rain. I sneered. The little assistant had a deep filter for me and Ji Xiangchen. I didn't say anything, nor did I refute. I lowered my eyes and looked at my hands. Therefore, I missed Ji Xiangchen's mouth corners that were restrained in vain, and his eyes that gradually darkened. 17 No, she is not doing well. Not at all. 18 In fact, as long as I don't want to. Shen Yan can't find me. I know. Everything I did abroad was erased by the Shen family. I am not a person in the circle. The novel was just an accident. When I quit, Shen Yan knew nothing except that I returned to China. Let alone him, I guess even Mrs. Shen is worried and doesn't know where I am. I am hidden in the crowd. Shen Yan's every move is known to everyone. I heard that the new movie invested by his company stopped filming without any warning halfway through. I heard that the official blog of Shen Yan's company issued a statement. Only 3 words. Sorry. The confusing direction stimulated a group of people on the internet. Everyone knows that He Jiao and Shen Yan have a close relationship, and they are all guessing what happened. I rarely go online, and these things were told to me by Ji Xiangchen. He pinched his nose and gritted his teeth. Your ex-boyfriend is really dramatic. Shen Yan spent a lot of effort and money to find me. Ji Xiangchen has to pay a corresponding price to hide me. This profit-seeking capitalist is embarrassed. My grandmother's birthday is tomorrow. You come with me. Ji Xiangchen suddenly said. I raised half an eyebrow. The status of the Ji family is not something that a small wealthy family like the Shen family can easily touch. Things like grandma's birthday are not within my job scope. Ji Xiangchen said, there will be many tycoons at that time. I let you go to open your eyes. Yes. I understand. He is a revengeful young man who has returned and is waiting for an opportunity. On the surface, he is a well-behaved and kind young master in the rich circle, but in fact he has placed his confidants in the world of fame and fortune to secretly take away family resources. I am that confidant. The responsibility is heavy and the road is long. The Ji family's old house is not accessible to ordinary people, so Ji Xiangchen drove to pick me up. I wore a black off-shoulder fishtail skirt and was shivering when I got in the car. He looked at me with a dark face. Are you going to perform? Me. He is a capitalist, and he is renminbi. I emphasized to myself again and again in my heart, and squeezed out a nice smile. Shouldn't I dress more formally for such a birthday party? There are many business tycoons. Ji Xiangchen looked at me with deep eyes. No, just dress normally. I understood. Since the capitalist said so, why should I be pretentious? I went upstairs and changed my clothes quickly. Knitted long skirt with a red coat. Ji Xiangchen didn't say anything along the way. When we arrived at the place, I knew that I, who was dressed normally, was the most abnormal person in the audience. A woman who looked to be in her 30s, wearing a tube-top couture, walked towards Ji Xiangchen with a glass of wine. Xiaochen, here you are. Ji Xiangchen, yes, sister-in-law. My heart trembled. This person is Ji Xiangchen's sister-in-law, a real socialite. Gao Shuhua. She looked at me naturally and gently, without any discomfort of being scrutinized. Old Lady Ji was on the 3rd floor, and Ji Xiangchen took me upstairs through the crowd. Ji Xiangchen was very favored. I always knew that he was rich. At first, I thought he was the youngest son who was exiled because of failure in the family's fight for the family property. But it was not until this moment that I realized that for a top wealthy family like the Ji family, the more superior, the more humble and gentle. Not all capitalists are like the Shen family. Old Lady Ji kept me and drove Ji Xiangchen away. Go to the study, your elder brother has something to ask you. I was startled and a little nervous. I looked at Ji Xiangchen, and Ji Xiangchen also looked surprised. I unconsciously clenched my palms, and I was sweating unexpectedly. Ji Xiangchen said, Grandma, you don't need it. Gao Shuhua scolded him, just go if I tell you to. I'm here. Ji Xiangchen glanced at her, gave me a look I couldn't understand, and turned away. Then I'll come back early to accompany Grandma. I heard the sound of Mrs. Ji sneering. 208 years ago, Mrs. Shen took my hand and took me to sit on the leather sofa. She looked graceful and smiled and said to Shang Yan, go get a glass of milk for Nianqing. At that time, I was still immersed in the shock that my boyfriend was actually the heir of the Shen family. My brain turned a lot slower than usual. Shen Yan was a good boy. Hearing this, he smiled and said, hey, go get me some hot milk. After the people left, Mrs. Shen looked at me meaningfully. You must have known about our Shen Ye's situation a long time ago, but about you, she chuckled, with a hint of sarcasm that I ignored. I just found out about his girlfriend. Can you tell me what's going on in your family? Shen Yan doesn't want to tell me. Mrs. Shen's hands are soft and smooth. Even though she is more than 20 years older than me, you definitely can't tell from her hands that she is. The hand she held was cold, making me feel uncomfortable. I told her that my father died early and my mother raised me alone. Mrs. Shen murmured, if a single mother wants to raise a child, she has to pay a lot. I nodded, so I've been working part-time in the school cafeteria since my freshman year. My mother did pay a lot to support my schooling and raise me. Mrs. Shen suddenly covered her lips and smiled. In my surprised face, she explained, Nianxing, do you know? The conversation I just had with you is the same as what I said to the poor students in our family. I was in a trance for a moment. She said faintly, but I never thought that my son would be fooled by such a person. I felt like I fell into an ice cave. At that moment, it was like someone poured a bucket of ice water from head to toe. It was as if I was a clown in people's eyes. Exposed in front of people, for people to laugh at. The suffering I suffered was a joke after tea in her eyes. Our efforts are just a little charity that flows out of their fingers. Shen Yang complained to me with a smile, the aunt at home actually heated up the expired milk mixed with high-quality milk, which made me wait so long. He was explaining to me. I looked at him. Iron. Do you think that the Shen family, your family, may have expired milk? And why did I heat up this cup when I came? I asked, why don't you tell auntie about my family situation? He was stunned. I continued to ask, my mother and I make money with our own ability. We never begged for mercy from others in the most difficult times. What can't my family show? Why are you laughing? He stepped forward to hold my hand, a little flustered. Nian Nian, what's wrong? I stepped back to avoid him. I'm going abroad. Shen Yan's pupils widened. I looked at the boy's stunned face and felt a little reluctant. I will come back. I will work hard to reach you so that you can introduce me to your mother in a dignified manner. 21. I didn't take Mrs. Shen's money. Sheng Yan always thought that his mother sponsored me and that I was one of the poor students in their family's poverty alleviation. In my first year at Harvard, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and spent all the family savings. Originally, we sold our house to support my studies, and later I took out the money to treat my mother. I work and study abroad. I don't need charity from anyone. So, whether it was 8 years ago or now, I have no guilt in front of the Shen family and Sheng Yan. Even if the internet is now in an uproar because of Sheng Yan's Weibo, I have a clear conscience. At this moment, Mrs. Shen looked at me, and the smile she had in those days was gone. Her eyes were incredulous and full of anger. But I was no longer moved. I didn't care what she thought. Whether it was good or bad, I didn't care. At Mrs. G's birthday party, all the prominent people in the city came. How dare the Shen family be absent? I was like a junior, holding Mrs. G's arm, and she took me to meet many of her old friends, many people who were often seen in financial magazines and military magazines. Some people asked me who I was. Old Lady G said, Ming Zhu, the girl Xiao Chen brought back from abroad, is not easy and works hard. You will see her often in the news in the future. I can't tell what I feel. I helped Old Lady G to sit down. The table was full of elders, and I stood behind Old Lady G. They chatted happily, all about light topics. Old Lady G also talked about the embarrassing incident of Ji Xiangchen hugging her and crying last month. I thought it was funny. Although I couldn't get a word in, there was no embarrassment or discomfort. Ji Xiangchen came down the stairs. I had a smile on my face, as if I felt something. I raised my eyes and looked at him, and Ji Xiangchen looked away. He had cleaned up today, and coupled with years of fitness, he had a capitalist wolfish nature all over his body. Gao Shuhua teased, are you still afraid that we will bully Xiaonian? So anxious. Ji Xiangchen and I looked at each other, just one glance, and he looked away. Ji Xiangchen didn't say anything, and asked me, what are you talking about? Why are you laughing so happily? What a capable guy. He picked a soft persimmon that he could easily squeeze. I answered him seriously, I was talking about the time when you hugged Grandma Ji and cried. Ji Xiangchen looked at me, and the unknown was surging in his dark eyes. I avoided him. Grandma, don't be like this. You made me lose face in front of my subordinates. He complained like a spoiled child. Everyone laughed again. But I didn't smile. I just overstepped my bounds, and the relaxed atmosphere gave me courage. I actually teased the boss. Fortunately, Ji Xiangchen didn't care, so it was a roundup. After the dinner, Ji Xiangchen called me, let's go. Gao Shuhua personally sent us out. On the way, she asked us some questions about our work. They were not sensitive, and I answered them one by one. Someone drove Ji Xiangchen's car out, and I got in. Through the car window, I saw Gao Shuhua talking to Ji Xiangchen. I don't know what Gao Shuhua said. Ji Xiangchen's eyebrows were slightly raised, and his eyes were bright and dark, full of ambition. Gao Shuhua left, and Ji Xiangchen got in the car. On the way, the capitalist said, find out all the people you met at the meeting tonight, especially don't let go of your competitors. I quietly flipped through my phone, and the phone emitted a faint light. 2001.it. It's not that I don't want to report. It's just that the time has not come yet. To the next day, I received a call from the company's front desk. Shen Yan came to the company to find me. I knew I couldn't hide it. The moment I saw Mrs. Shen yesterday, I had already expected it. I went downstairs, took Shen Yan out of the company, and took him to the cafe downstairs of the company. I saw Shen Yan's dark circles under his eyes and his fatigue. Nian Nian, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for the movie. You are the boss and you have the final say. Shen Yan shook his head, looking a little painful. No, it's He Jiao, Nian Nian. I'm sorry. I spread my hands and acted generously. It's okay, I forgive you. Shen Yan was stunned, then smiled bitterly. Stop joking, okay? I looked at Shen Yan seriously. I could never have imagined that the boy would become what he is now. Shen Yan, then you came to me today. Have you made up your mind? Do you want to terminate the contract with He Jiao? Shen Yan's expression was sluggish for a moment. He didn't think about it. He just hesitated between me and He Jiao, wanting to have both and not wanting to lose either. My existence made He Jiao look like a substitute. He felt wronged for He Jiao and felt sorry for He Jiao. My determination made Shen Yan wake up from his dream again. He no longer loved me, but was just forcing himself to love me. Shen Yan's eyes were slightly red, and he looked at me pitifully. Nian Yan, give me some time to think about it, okay? My mind is a little confused now. I thought about it a lot when I returned to China this time. Is this man in front of me the man I have been trying to see for 8 years? Even if I deceive myself and tell myself that he is not. But when he protects two different women, his expression of heartache is the same. Just like his grief and distress now, it is the same as when he hugged me and cried 8 years ago when I said I wanted to go abroad. I snorted and stood up. Shen Yan, you don't have to think about it. I looked at him, and in his dull eyes, I showed my pity. It's me who doesn't want to be with you anymore. I said the most sincere thoughts in my heart. You make me feel sick now. Shen Yan stopped me in disbelief. What do you mean? Nian Nian, you don't you love me anymore? I think it's time to say goodbye to the past formally. Shen Yan, I used to love you very much. These 8 years were very hard. I encountered many things. I wanted to return home many times. You were the only motivation that supported me for so many years. I can stick to you for 8 years because I love you. You asked me if I don't love you anymore. I told him gently and firmly. Yes, I don't love you anymore. I have a clear conscience for loving you all these years. I will never look back if I don't love you anymore. Shen Yan, I will never make a choice between the two of you. 23 I walked out of the cafe calmly and walked into the elevator. My mind was blank all the way, and finally I walked up the stairs to the rooftop. I didn't expect to see Ji Xiangchen on the top floor. He said, "What's wrong?" I didn't say anything, but suddenly I felt my eyes warm, and my eyes were blurred and covered with mist. I thought I was no longer uncomfortable, but I couldn't control my tears, and the unspeakable grievances gushed up. 8 years of persistence, in exchange for Shen Ye's change of heart. Everything I did was not as good as the heroine in the dream. I squatted on the ground. He asked me where I lived. Where do I live? I am not a local, my hometown is a small city, and I came here for the college entrance examination. I only know Shen Yan here. Shen Yan asked me where I lived. What should I say? Say that I will come to you as soon as I get off the plane and see you celebrating another woman's birthday. Let the last bit of self-esteem that I carefully maintained be shattered in front of him. To win his sympathy and guilt. How can he ask me where I live? How can he do this? I had expected this moment. I knew Shen Yan didn't love me. It's not because of the script that had been written long ago. The moment I met Shen Yan again in the villa, when he left me and drove away, I had expected that I was the superfluous person. It's just that I have been deceiving myself all the time. I am a clown, I am a vicious female supporting role, I have a weird personality, I am sensitive. I am not as cute as He Jiao, nor as lovable as He Jiao. I know. But I thought Shen Yan loved me. He said he loved me, so I believed him. Why did I believe him? But I think he should know. No matter what. Even if I keep making excuses for him in my heart. But how can I make it up? If I don't love you, I don't love you. 24 Knowing that I have completely broken up with Shen Yan, Ji Xiangchen was visibly happy. Yes, after all, he doesn't have to worry about someone poaching a great talent like me. Don't even mention his small broken company. Even if the Shen family invites you over, they still have to consider whether they can accommodate a big Buddha like you. I smiled and took a sip of coffee. I am indeed no longer the Su Nianxing of the past. Although Ji Xiangchen was a bit exaggerated. He was right about one thing. The Shen family can't bear my ambition. I'm not in love. Even if Shen Yan doesn't have someone new around him, I won't go to his company. 25 The company hasn't been listed yet, and we're bidding with others recently. Ji Xiangchen is not an easy boss to talk to. Let alone a broken heart. Even if a loving couple divorces, they don't dare to be sad in front of him. There are many competitors, and I, the vice president, am not familiar with the domestic situation. I get stuck everywhere when doing things. I got the flu at this critical moment, and my fever reached 38 degrees. I didn't even dare to go to the hospital. The little assistant has lost his mind recently. He actually bought the CP of the proletariat and capitalism. Whenever he sees me talking to Ji Xiangchen, his eyes will light up. He also told me with starry eyes that Ji Xiangchen always stared at me in a daze during meetings recently. If she had a little more eyes and looked down a little, she would have found that Ji Xiangchen's exploitation of me had reached the point of indignation. The assistant's blindness and her acting skills successfully attracted Ji Xiangchen. Ji Xiangchen distributed employee benefits the next day. Each person received an envelope of 50 cents. The assistant was so excited that she ordered a luxurious pig brain meal to reward herself that night. He is indeed a capitalist. The tips were all invisible. I patted the assistant's shoulder. Meaningfully. Eat more. Someone stuffed another bag of medicine and a small note into my office. No leave allowed. Ruthless. Cruel. But I still had to go to the hospital. My mother had a car accident. She rode an electric bike to go out to buy groceries and scraped against a car. Although it was only a slight concussion, it scared me. I am a woman with a strong sense of career. Not to mention being sick and having a fever, even if I lose my arms and legs, I can stick to my post without moving. My mother is my only exception. She is always my first priority. When I received the call from the driver who caused the accident, my mind was blank. I asked which hospital, said goodbye to the assistant and left. I am usually afraid of Ji Xiangchen. When facing him, I never dare to say that I am tired or tired. I will be nervous, afraid and regretful if I make a joke to him. When facing him, I am always energetic. The crying on the rooftop was an accident. Normally, I would have my eyes wide open when I yawned or shed tears in front of him. In the past, I didn't dare to skip work when the whole company was working overtime to prepare for the battle. But the moment my mother got into trouble, I threw everything behind my mind. The dead and turned off mobile phone made me miss Ji Xiangchen's call. 26 I booked the earliest high-speed train back. There is no airport in a small city. My mother thinks the price here is expensive and doesn't want to live with me. When I arrived at the hospital, my mother had already moved to the general ward. She was awake. Although my mother is old now, she is still very strong and stubborn. Why did you come back? She sat up from the bed. Don't you want to work anymore? She asked. I breathed a sigh of relief and my tense heartstrings relaxed. There is still time to work. I guess it's okay. I lied to her, the most difficult thing has been solved. My boss saw that I worked hard and gave me a month off. I was originally planning to travel and bought everything. Now I have to come back. My mother looked at me suspiciously. But I haven't seen her for 8 years. I am almost 30 years old. I lied to her, a person in her 50s, and she could see that I lied. I really wasted my time. I knew my mother was old a long time ago. Because she has been working all year round, she ages faster than others. But this time when I saw her, I still felt like I was in another world. My grandma was almost 80 when she became hard of hearing. She was only 58 years old. I charged my phone and saw the call from Ji Xiangchen that I missed. My heart skipped a beat and I called him back with a guilty conscience. It was turned off. It was even stranger. Ji Xiangchen's phone was never turned off. Until the evening, I received a strange call. My mother had a headache and went to bed early. I just bought a folding bed and it was not long since I opened it. The phone rang loudly and I was afraid of waking her up. I hurriedly answered the call. Who is this? There was silence on the other end for a moment. I heard someone urging, hurry up and talk. Is the phone bill free? You are just talking here. I frowned, a little confused. At this time, Ji Xiangchen's slightly awkward voice climbed up to my ears along the phone. I'm at the train station. Please come and pick me up now, he paused and said, and bring some money by the way. Me? Capitalist, what's wrong with you? My mother turned over. There were waves of rubbing of the quilt, and my mother said in a calm voice, go back quickly if you have a job, why waste time with me, an old woman? I didn't say anything, took my coat and bag and gently closed the door. 27 Ji Xiangchen lost his mobile phone and wallet. For some reason, he followed me to this 18th tier small city with inconvenient transportation. Ji Xiangchen is also capable. He obviously has no money, but he can eat and drink at the train station just by relying on his mouth. There were wine, peanuts, hot pot, and various kinds of meat on the table, which was a luxurious treatment at first glance. A man held a broken screen mobile phone and respectfully held it in front of him, with today's stock market report on it. You can't do this, sell it quickly, this is a sunset industry. He ate beef, his eyebrows were bright, his forehead was slightly sweaty, and his thin lips were rosy. A red-faced old man next to him squinted at his phone, looking puzzled. Impossible, I bought good stocks. Someone next to him waved his hand. Teacher Ji said it's not okay, you should sell it quickly. Teacher Ji. As soon as I stepped into the small restaurant, Ji Xiangchen drank up the soup in the bowl and stood up. His expression was a little weird, and I didn't know how to face him. I was going to pay for him, but the boss didn't want to take it, saying that they all volunteered to treat us, and he also took a lot of beef for us to take away. Someone also asked me if I was his wife, who went home for the new year, and looked unfamiliar. There are people coming and going in a small city, and we look too much like outsiders. I was even more embarrassed. When facing Ji Xiangchen, especially, I didn't dare to look back at him. I didn't know how to face these students of Ji Xiangchen who were drunk and had red faces and thick necks. My wrist was pulled up by someone, and Ji Xiangchen pulled me out. The man's hands were big and strong. I don't know what he went through on the way, his coat was a little wrinkled, but it still couldn't hide his nobleness. Snow fell from the sky. He walked forward against the wind, and I followed him for some reason. The cold wind blew on my face, but it was nothing. 28, why are you here? I just realized that he didn't bring any luggage. It was so late, the mall was closed, and there was no place to sell mobile phones. Anyway, let's talk about other things tomorrow, we have to find a place for Ji Xiangchen to stay first. The hotel inn. The small city is not clean and not big, not as good as the one Sheng Yan sent me to that day. Ji Xiangchen didn't say anything, and didn't pick and choose. He took me to the 24-hour self-service store to buy some things and went upstairs. I sent him in. It's not uncommon for a man and a woman to enter a hotel before. It's just that the situation today is unprecedented. It's awkward, hasty, and simple, even a little ridiculous. With the Ji family's status, Ji Xiangchen's arrival in this small city is already out of place, not to mention that he is holding a plastic bag in his hand. I looked at the bag and couldn't bear to look at it. With a ding-ling sound, Ji Xiangchen opened the door. I said in a low voice, I'll come back at 7 tomorrow. He didn't say anything. We just stood there. Until the lights in the corridor were turned off. He didn't insert the room card, so it was dark. Only the green words safe passage on the corner of the wall glowed stubbornly. Want a drink? I was slightly surprised. Ah. Ji Xiangchen turned around. His profile was very good looking. The lines were smooth and firm, his eyes were starry and stained with smoke. He stretched out his left hand from his coat pocket. He was holding a bottle of Arguoto that could be bought for 20 years. I originally thought that the wine that capitalists drank was 1982 Lafite. Capitalism with Arguoto. Fashionable. 29 I took Ji Xiangchen to enjoy the luxurious wontons for 8 years, the beautiful open-air scenery, the high-grade grey and yellow snow underfoot, and the chorus of unpretentious tourists beside us. Unique, the only one here. The bowl was steaming, and the man opposite was holding the spoon with red knuckles. Auntie, are you okay? I quickly swallowed the hot wontons and said, it's okay, I can go back this afternoon at the latest. My tongue was numbed by the heat, and my vision was blurry. 3 seconds. Tears bloomed and slid down my cheeks. I looked into Ji Xiangchen's surprised and slightly stunned black eyes. He lowered his eyelids and used a spoon to push a few wontons from the bowl into my bowl. All for you, no rush. He blew the soup with his mouth, and I could no longer see his expression. In the morning, I took Ji Xiangchen to buy a mobile phone, and then went to the bank to report Ji Xiangchen's card lost. Ji Xiangchen called his assistant himself. He bought supplements and said he wanted to visit my mother. Me. My mother is much more mean than me. I'm afraid that capitalism has never seen a real aunt. 30 My mother knew that Ji Xiangchen was my boss, and she ate half a bowl more rice than yesterday, whether it was intentional or not. After the meal, Ji Xiangchen was willing to give. He didn't look like an unkind big capitalist, but he really had some junior attitude. My mother was also kind and amiable. 2 people who were very close to me were both possessed in front of me. Even though I was knowledgeable and smart, I was still a little shocked. I went to the lobby to pay the fee, and without saying anything, I moved my mother to a better ward and hired a nurse. There were many people here, and my mother couldn't sleep because of snoring at night. Seeing that I was determined, my mother didn't say much. I took my phone and started to book tickets. Ji Xiangchen said at this time, it's already booked, it's time to go. I was stunned, and the page on the phone was still the ticket page. I subconsciously glanced at my mother. The stubborn and arrogant old lady's face flashed a moment of helplessness, like a child. But she said nothing. I looked away. Okay. 31 We took the high-speed train to the airport in the next city, but the flight was delayed due to heavy snow. When we got on the return high-speed train, we were almost a day later than expected. I was busy all the way, holding my phone in my left hand and typing on my notebook with my right hand. I frowned and scolded the people below for being stupid. Suddenly, Ji Xiangchen on the left reached out, pressed my notebook, took my phone and hung up. It's late, listen, don't waste your energy. Instead of being anxious and not being able to do anything well, it's better to take a good rest now. There are not many such opportunities. I was stunned, took the phone and put it in my pocket. Ji Xiangchen wore an eye mask and leaned back in the chair. It took a long time. We passed through tunnels one after another, and the sun shone on Ji Xiangchen's face again and again. I looked sideways, and the fine hairs on his nose were clearly visible. I sat back and stared at the nothingness in front of me. The high-speed train I took that day was the last train. You must have taken a hard seat on the train. What on earth made you so anxious? The high-speed train drove into the darkness, buzzing. I thought he had fallen asleep and might not get an answer. The man's muffled voice was particularly clear on the high-speed train. I'm better than the kid from the Shen family. He took off his eye mask. At the moment when the high-speed train broke through the haze and ushered in the dawn. As you think, I like you. 32 Ji Xiangchen drove me back to a high-end apartment. The company assigned it. That is, it was given by Ji Xiangchen. I didn't dare to look at him. I opened the car door and left. When I left, I heard the man's faint laughter, which made my ears hot. I buried myself in the bathtub and my phone rang. A WeChat message from Ji Xiangchen. No need to avoid suspicion, I have always kept my public and private lives separate. I looked at the cold words and curled my lips. Of course I know. You are a big capitalist who has to make a satisfactory plan overnight even when you break up, and you have to keep a group of people busy until the early morning for such a big event as Grandma's birthday. I sneered and threw the phone aside. The Ji family is much higher than the Shen family. Shen Ye's mother is unwilling to accept me and tried her best to drive me away. Even if Ji Xiangchen is just the youngest son of the Ji family, his eldest sister-in-law is Gao Shuohua. Let me be a sister-in-law with Gao Shuohua. Although I will not look down on myself. But I don't know that there is no possibility between me and Ji Xiangchen. Ji Xiangchen likes me. Does he just want to have an underground relationship or find a companion? I don't care much. He is a very sensible person. He will not force me or make things difficult for me. Gentle, restrained and distant. This is him. 3 When my boss confessed his love to me, I was a little excited and nervous at first. Ji Xiangchen and I are not rookies. As he said, we should keep public and private affairs separate. I did not take advantage of my boss's favor to be lazy, and he did not give me preferential treatment because he liked me. At first, I felt a little awkward, but I saw that Ji Xiangchen was no different from usual, just like the embarrassed man who followed me on the train that day with a wrinkled coat and stolen belongings was not Ji Xiangchen. It's almost the new year, and the work is almost done. It's a rare leisure time after winning the bid. Ji Xiangchen came to my office with a bag. You've been working hard recently. He put the bag in front of me. Through the bag, I smelled the sweet smell of small cakes. I looked normal and opened the bag. There were several small snacks of different shapes in it. Small and beautiful. My sister-in-law made this herself. She asked me to bring some to you. I was startled, and the smile on my lips faded. I looked at Ji Xiangchen with a stiff expression. What's wrong? He was frightened by me and looked at me. I looked a little weird. You. What did you say to her? I asked strangely, and Ji Xiangchen took a few seconds to react before laughing. She wants to ask you for help with a project. I breathed a sigh of relief, and then felt a little embarrassed. Maybe she just wanted to play with you, but I was so arrogant that I thought she had introduced me to her family. Gao Shuhua's status meant that her brother-in-law's girlfriend outside didn't need to be of any concern to her, not to mention that I was not and could not be Ji Xiangchen's girlfriend. Fortunately, a phone call eased my embarrassment. I received a call from the police. 3-4 According to the surveillance, Mr. Shen not only ran a red light, but also squatted in the middle of the road because of a stomach disease. The road was slippery on a snowy day, and he almost got into trouble. I stood in the hospital, looking confused. Ji Xiangchen leaned against the wall a few meters away from me. The police looked at me, then looked at Ji Xiangchen, and asked me, "Are you Mr. Shen's wife?" I shook my head. No. The police was a little embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Shen's phone was broken, and we found out that you were his emergency contact, so we called you, but we didn't expect it to be a misunderstanding." Ji Xiangchen went to pay the medical bills and bought me a cup of American coffee. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" he asked. I looked in the direction of the ward and shook my head. "No, I have already contacted He Jiao. What happened to Shen Yan has nothing to do with me." Ji Xiangchen nodded, and we stood between the floors waiting for the elevator. With a ding, I met He Jiao, who was anxious. She looked dazed for a moment, mixed with bitterness and unwillingness. He Jiao and I do have some similarities, except for temperament. It is really hard to tell from the face and figure. I was a little embarrassed. Because of selfishness, although I mentioned the matter between Shen Yan and me to Ji Xiangchen, I didn't say it was because of He Jiao. I couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed when we met suddenly. Ji Xiangchen went in first. "I'll wait for you downstairs." He Jiao also came back to her senses, stood in front of me, smiled, looked at me with a clear look in her eyes, and smiled with some relief. "Let's talk." 35 Mr. Shen is very good. I signed with the company when I was young and ignorant. If it weren't for Mr. Shen, I don't know what I would have suffered. I am here today, all thanks to Mr. Shen. I know he is special to me, and I like him, but I don't know that I am just a substitute, taking your place. I thought it was strange at first. There are so many beauties in the entertainment industry, why did he fall in love with me? Today, Mr. Shen took me to meet his mother. I was not ready. I heard that 8 years ago today was the day you went abroad, so I understood. When I was at his house, he took good care of me and insisted he is so gentle and kind, and he never leaves my side. She paused and sneered, "You are so considerate that I realize that I am just a guest." Screenwriter saw, "Do you know how much I envy you?" She smiled and shook her head. "It's not because Mr. Shen can't forget you, but I think if I were you, I probably wouldn't be able to leave my hometown for Mr. Shen, alone, and stay there for 8 years. I left freely and let go even more freely. But I can't do it. Even if Mr. Shen doesn't say it, I know that he admires you." She smiled and raised her hand to wipe away the tears from the corners of her eyes. "I can't do it. I heard that you completed your studies at Harvard on your own without Aunt Shen's support. It's amazing, really." She spoke with a tearful tone. "I'm not unwilling to lose to you, but I'm unwilling to be inferior to you." I didn't know what to say, so I had to tell the truth. I was expelled from Harvard in my first year because I couldn't afford the tuition. I said calmly, "I wish you happiness." I picked up the bag on the table and nodded slightly to her. 3-6 When I met Ji Xiangchen, I had been expelled from Harvard for some time. At that time, I sold securities to him, but the sales performance was not counted on me. My boss at that time looked down on Chinese people, and I was kicked out without getting my share. When Ji Xiangchen asked me if I wanted to work for him, I was already wandering on the street. I only had enough money to buy a sausage on the roadside, not even enough for the return ticket. I slept in the church for one night, and went to Ji Xiangchen's small office the next day. Because I had no money, I suffered a lot and almost couldn't come back. Fortunately, I met a capitalist who was willing to teach me. I am stubborn and stubborn. There is nothing to envy. As for the 8 years abroad, I was angry at first and wanted to prove something unfounded to Shen Yan's mother. But as time went by, Shen Yan was no longer everything to me. In addition to Shen Yan, my future also had ideals and ambitions. A capitalist took me to see the stars and mountains, and my vision is no longer limited to a narrow window. If it weren't for Ji Xiangchen, my 8 years would have been a mess. I walked to the parking lot. Ji Xiangchen honked the horn of the phaeton loudly. I heard Shen Ye's choked sobs in my ears. Nian Nian, I'm sorry. I hung up the phone, looked at Ji Xiangchen in the car, got in the car, closed the door and fastened my seatbelt. There is no possibility for Shen Yang and me. A girl has no money abroad. Shen Yan is not a fool, he knows how much it will cost. Now that he knows, even if he is unwilling, he has no face to appear in front of me again. I will never live according to the route planned for me by others. Without Shen Yan, I am still me. I am not the white moonlight ex that Shen Yang can't forget, I am Sun Yanqing. 37 Gao Shuhua has a good project that has already taken shape and does not need my help at all. I guess she has something to say to me. Come to think of it, you and I are alumni. Gao Shuhua is a Harvard PhD in finance and psychology. In fact, I only stayed at Harvard for 1 semester. My smile faded a little. My academic qualifications are embarrassing now. Let alone not graduating, even if I graduated, it is not worth mentioning to a truly knowledgeable person like Gao Shuhua. You have something that I don't have. I admire you for being able to get to where you are today. My brother-in-law used to be cold and arrogant, but now he looks much gentler. He is still rebellious in his bones. I am not surprised that he likes you. Gao Shuhua had a teasing smile on his lips. I hope you don't dislike him. Me. Why do you look at me like that? Don't you believe it? Grandma likes you very much. If Xiangchen can have you by his side, it will be a blessing for the Ji family. The Shen family is blind, but you can't be blinded. Family background and money cannot be the only criteria for measuring a person. Your mother had the courage to sell the house to support your education, which was better than many parents. You can take out the money to treat your mother's illness. This kind of heart has won the respect of all of us. I was speechless and just looked at her. Of course, what will happen in the future depends on the ability of my unpromising brother-in-law. Nianxing, you are very good. In the evening, Gao Shuhua had something to leave and asked Ji Xiangchen to take me back. Ji Xiangchen and I walked side by the river. Snowflakes were floating in the sky. We were all wearing thin clothes. He asked me if I wanted to go back to the car. I took out a bottle of wine from my bag. Orgoto. He smiled at the words on it, and I smiled too. Let's drink it today. Okay. I don't drink much, and I felt a little dizzy after a few drinks. I thought of the entertainment gossip that has been making a lot of noise on the internet these days. I heard that a male star was arrested for taking drugs in the theater. Before Ji Xiangchen spoke, I said to myself, the filming of that movie has also stopped. Do you believe in fate? No, he said firmly. I looked at him and said meaningfully, do you think it is possible that our ending has been predetermined? Maybe I will die soon, and after I die, thousands of people will cheer, but no one will miss me. Ji Xiangchen raised his hand and touched my head lightly. No, I'm here. He spread his hands to me. There's snow. The man's palms were clean, without any water stains. I took a look and said, let's go. 38 Ji Xiangchen's own company has been listed, and he has been having dinner parties everywhere during this period. I am happy to be free. It's rare to have time to relax. I took advantage of this opportunity to look through the mailbox I used to use and received an email from Shen Yao. He is getting engaged with He Jiao. He Jiao is a nice person. Simple and cute, not weathered by the wind and frost. Shen Yan paved a smooth road for her and protected her very well. She is a flower bud in a greenhouse, pampered by thousands of people. I smiled, closed the mailbox, but was not ready to go. Who knew that afternoon, Ji Xiangchen dressed himself up and stood in front of me. Meticulous hair, custom-made black suit, expensive watch, straight back, noble and calm. If I don't let you give up completely, how can you have time to look at me straight in the eye? I ridiculed him. You have always looked down on him, and you still care about him. When love is deep, it is hard to help it. Ji Xiangchen helped me up the stairs in front of the hotel gate, with a smile on his lips and soft eyebrows, which made people feel strange and moved. A man who is nearly 1.9 meters tall has been holding his head high for half his life. He looks so comfortable. He has been sitting on the cloud for a long time. Suddenly, he leans down to remind you to watch the road. I lowered my head and covered the corners of my mouth. 39 Shen Yan was wearing a white suit, mature and steady, and He Jiao was wearing a fishtail skirt, beautiful and charming. He saw Ji Xiangchen and walked towards me with a glass of wine. Nian Nian, when we get married, I will give you a grand wedding and spoil you like a princess. I want to be your Prince Charming. I will give you happiness and never let you suffer any grievances. Ji Xiangchen suddenly reached out and gently held my waist. I came back to look at him, and he handed me a glass of wine with his other hand. It's not high in alcohol, don't worry. I thanked him and took it. Shen Yan walked a few steps to me. Nian. Miss Su, his lips moved, and the corners of his beautiful eyes turned red. You are here. I nodded and smiled. Happy engagement. He looked at me without saying anything. Ji Xiangchen toasted him. Congratulations to Mr. Shen, for finally finding a beautiful woman. Mr. Ji is here too. I felt Ji Xianchen glanced at me. I came here to accompany Nian Qing. Then please do as you please. Okay, Mr. Shen, take care. Shen Yan looked at him, and finally looked at me. Miss Su, I have something to say to you alone. Before I spoke, I felt Ji Xiangchen's hand on my waist tighten slightly. I turned my head to look at him. Ji Xiangchen smiled unchanged. It's quiet upstairs, I'll go sober up. Shen Yan and I stood at the door. It was in the public, but also far away from the crowd. It was just convenient for me to talk to Shen Yang. Mr. Shen is about to get married, so you need to pay attention to some important contact information in the future. Shen Yang smiled bitterly. Don't worry, I already know your intentions, and what happened last time will not happen again. I no longer have the face to ask for your forgiveness, but Nian Yang, the Ji family is a noble family. Ji Xiangchen is the most favored by old lady Ji, and Ji Xiangchen's eldest sister-in-law is Gao Shuhua, a famous lady. The Shen family does not have the ability to marry into the Ji family. I don't want you to suffer that pain and meet the wrong person again. I find it funny. Shen Yang, you really haven't changed at all in all these years. It's not that I don't deserve it, it's that you think I don't deserve it. He frowned, as if he wanted to explain something. There was a scream not far away, and the sound of broken cups and plates. A thin man waved a knife around. I frowned and recognized him as the traffic star who ran over to warn me. I heard that he was caught for drug use, but I didn't expect him to run to Shen Yan and He Jiao's engagement party. I looked at him and he came towards me. He Jiao shouted, "Here. Run." My heart trembled, but my legs were stiff and I couldn't move. I took 2 steps back, tripped by my skirt, and fell to the ground. It's really a necessary plot in novels, and you have to fall down when you are in danger. It's just that the heroine has the hero, and the fate of the vicious female supporting role is only death. I looked at the knife getting closer and closer to me, and my heart was empty. Is this my fate? Shen Yan came quickly and protected me. But I couldn't feel a bit relaxed. The tip of the knife was about to pierce Shen Yan. He Jiao covered his eyes and dared not look, and there were screams around. Saw Nianqing. I'm going to kill you. I opened my eyes and looked at everything absurd. Suddenly, a figure jumped down from the 2nd floor. No turning back, no scruples. A more violent scream came. Ji Xiaoqing raised the bottle and smashed it on the man's head. The glass shattered all over the ground. His hands were stained with blood and his eyebrows were cold. He came over and lifted me up with his strong arms. Don't be afraid, I'm here. He took off his coat and put it on me, and held me in his arms with his uninjured hand. Ji Xiangchen, do you believe in fate? He paused, then said, no. I hugged him back, then I don't believe it either. Extra, Ji Xiangchen, my brother, said that I was different from others since I was a child. I had a stubborn temper and a cold personality. I looked down on them and couldn't get into their hearts. I was tired of the unchanging scenery and people around me. I felt that they lived a simple and hasty life. The first time I met Su Nianqing, she was no different. There was worry between her eyebrows and she was eager for quick success. The securities she sold were average, and her eloquence was average. No. Different from others. Only the eyes that tried their best to break free from fate moved me a little sympathy, so I bought her shitty securities. But she was young and didn't know too many things. She was plotted by her boss and failed. Not only could she not continue her studies, but she also had to sleep on the streets. I sat there for an afternoon, but finally I softened my heart and decided to give her another way. I watched her walk more and more steadily, see farther and farther, frown less and less, smile more and more, and I looked at her more and more. I took her to see the mountains and rivers, took her to see the wickedness of human hearts, let her encounter the coldness of the world, and let her see and experience everything. I hope she can see further. Just a Shen Yan. The Shen family is not worth her deep obsession. She is no different from other people I have met. The difference is my attitude towards her. She asked for leave from me, saying that she wanted to deal with some personal matters. I was a little annoyed. This child is incorrigible. I ignored her and left her leave unapproved. She was capable enough to book a flight and run back. I followed her back to China, but I didn't dare to call her. I drank and was too lazy to think about where she went, who she met, and what she did. I got drunk and was finally taken back to the Ji family by my eldest brother. When I woke up, my eldest sister-in-law told me that I cried yesterday and asked me what kind of girl I was. I was shocked. My eldest sister-in-law laughed at me for being slow. You have such deep thoughts about other girls, how come you don't know it yourself? I didn't say anything. My eldest brother laughed at me for being cowardly and wanted to teach me some tricks. I was too lazy to listen to his nagging. I was so dominated by my eldest sister-in-law that I didn't have any confidence. Later, when she came back, although she looked sad, she was also much more generous. I knew she had let it go. But I felt a little uneasy. Just like I bought her securities before, but it didn't help her, but made her worse. I was a little worried and kept an eye on her. I took her to see grandma, and my sister-in-law used the excuse of my brother to get me out of here. I was afraid of something happening, so I said some flattering words against my will to get away from my brother. I know you are thinking about other things. Our family doesn't value family background. There is only one thing, don't regret it after choosing, and don't let me look down on you. I heard my brother say when I went out. I was thinking about something in my heart, and hurried downstairs. The light was shining on her. I didn't know what she heard, but she laughed happily, and the hair hanging in front of her forehead swayed, and my heart was a little sour. I didn't care what others said, I just wanted to talk to her. I asked her what she talked about. She said she was talking about the embarrassing thing that happened last month when I hugged my grandma and cried. There was a sly smile on her lips. I raised my eyebrows. If I told her the reason, I don't know if she would still laugh. My sister-in-law is a talkative person. I was afraid that she would say something more, so I hurried to leave. My sister-in-law was very happy. It's rare to see you like this. It really opened my eyes. I stood outside the car, and saw Nianqing sat in the car. Sister-in-law, please be kind and don't scare people away. You were so stubborn before, and your brother was very angry. Even if I wanted to let you go, your brother would not be willing. But this girl is good. I think your brother is satisfied. When you bring her back officially, I will have a companion. I laughed, thinking of Su Nianqing's ambition. She will walk her own way. I won't arrange it for her. She is not a princess, she is a queen. Since I have made up my mind to pursue her, I will not hesitate. Her assistant is smart and was the first to see it. I waved my hand and gave out the bonus. Who knew that every once in a while, before Su Nianqing's assistant could help me speak well of her, I heard that something happened in her family. When I knew she was going home, I panicked. For the first time in my life, I acted recklessly without considering the consequences. I was afraid that no one would be around when she encountered an accident, and I didn't care about anything else. At that time, I didn't want to pursue her, but just hoped that I could listen to her when she wanted to talk. It turned out that there were standing tickets on the train. My mobile phone and wallet were stolen, and I didn't plan to call her. But except for her, I don't remember anyone else's phone number. Being teased that we are a couple, my uncontrollable heartbeat made me scared, but I soon calmed down. What I want, I always have to get it. Shen Yan is restless, he wants to make Su Nianqing soft-hearted by using the police. Although I am not afraid that Su Nianqing will change his mind, I don't want him to jump out from time to time to disgust people. The Shen family has been going downhill in recent years. Shen Yan is obsessed with love and grows too slowly. It will probably be better if he gets married. I am also doing it for his own good. The project in the south of the city is my wedding gift to Mr. Shen. Shen Yan's eyes were red with laughter, and I saw hatred in his eyes. What does Mr. Ji mean? These are all the sufferings she has suffered, but she confiscated Mrs. Shen's money. She can give up everything for you, but what about Mr. Shen? Since he still wants to renew the relationship, can Mr. Shen give up the Shen family for her? Mr. Shen knows what to say and what not to say, otherwise I don't mind taking care of the Shen family. I guess Shen Ye will not be content, so I simply cut off his thoughts completely. I followed Su Nianqing to his engagement party. He wanted to talk to Su Nianqing alone, which was really beyond his ability. He couldn't see through it, and would only make more mistakes, making Su Nianqing more annoyed. I gave him a chance. Big brother is right, I am a little arrogant. I thought I was in control, but something went wrong. A former star took a knife and wanted to hurt Su Nianqing. She fell to the ground. I saw Shen Yan standing in front of her. Her eyes were clear, and she didn't seem scared. She wanted to cry but couldn't. She looked like a hopeless wooden man who had accepted his fate. My heart was in pain. I went against the crowd and turned my back on the sea of people fleeing. I ran to the railing of the escalator with a bottle of red wine in my hand and jumped down. Ah! The screams from the crowd made him stop. The moment he turned around, I picked up the bottle and smashed it on his head. Su Nianqing, don't believe in fate. End.